All right, let's dive into one of the biggest headaches a planning engineer can face. Your project gets hit with an unexpected delay, and now you have to justify an extension of time claim. How do you do it right?
So picture this. You're on a critical project, everything's moving along, and then, bam, it hits a snag. It's falling behind schedule, the pressure is on, and you know you're entitled to more time. But how do you go from just saying we were delayed to actually proving it in a way that's going to stand up to some serious scrutiny? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this with a zoom lens approach. First, we'll look at the big picture problem. Then we'll zoom way out to get a solid grip on the critical path. After that, we'll zoom right in on the details of something called float, see how to analyze a delay's impact, go through the official procedure, and finally, see how it all works in the real world with Primavera P6.
Look, let's be real, unplanned delays are just a part of life in construction. It happens. But the stakes are always high, and the difference between getting the time you need and ending up in a costly dispute, well, it all comes down to moving from frustration to facts, from guesswork to hard data. Because here's the thing. Your contract doesn't care about feelings. It requires a structured, formal process. It's just not good enough to know a delay happened. You have to be able to demonstrate its exact impact on the finish date objectively and transparently.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Before we can even start to analyze a delay, we have to be speaking the right language. And the language of modern project schedules, it's all built around one single powerful idea, the critical path method. The critical path method, or CPM for short, is the industry gold standard. You can think of it as the project's DNA. It's not just a list of tasks. It's a dynamic model of all the activities and, this is the important part, how they're all connected. It's what lets us calculate the project timeline with real mathematical precision. And this is exactly why a CPM schedule is so much more than just a simple bar chart. It's a seriously powerful analytical tool. It tells you the absolute shortest time your project can take. It pinpoints the exact sequence of tasks that have zero room for error. It calculates the flexibility or float for everything else, and it gives us a model to test the impact of any change objectively.
Now let's zoom right in on the engine that drives this whole analysis. It's a concept called float. And I'm telling you, if you can master this one idea, you've got the key to proving the impact of almost any delay. So what is total float? It's basically just the wiggle room an activity has. The best analogy is a layover on a flight, right? If you have a 3-hour layover, you've got 3 hours of float. Your first flight can be delayed up to 3 hours, and you'll still make your connection and get to your destination on time. It's the spare time that's baked right into the schedule for certain tasks. And this idea of float creates a huge split. It divides every single activity in your project into two camps. On one side, you've got the critical activities. These have zero float, no wiggle room at all. They make up the critical path, and if one of them is delayed by even a single day, the whole project finish date gets pushed back. Then, on the other side, you have the non-critical activities. They have positive float, which gives them that super valuable flexibility. Okay, theory time is over. We've got our framework, CPM. We've got the engine that powers it, float. Now let's put it all together and see how we can use this stuff to professionally analyze the impact of a real unplanned delay. The official name for this procedure is a time impact analysis, or TIA. The key thing to remember about it is that it's a forward-looking technique. You're not looking back with 20/20 hindsight. You're creating a model to forecast what the impact of that delay is going to be on your final completion date. And this visual just explains it perfectly. Take a look at the top bar chart. That's the plan. You can see that activity 4 clearly has some float, some wiggle room. Now look at the bottom chart. We've inserted a 10-day delay. See what happens? First, it eats up all of that activity's float. And only then does it start pushing the project's critical path out, resulting in a net 8-day delay to the whole project. That right there is a TIA in action. So how do we perform one of these in a formal, defensible way? You can't just plug in random numbers. There's an industry standard procedure you need to follow to make sure your analysis is rock solid. Whoa, okay, that flowchart looks a little intense, right? Don't worry, we're not going to go through every single box. The main takeaway here is just that there is a formal industry standard process. Following a rigorous method like this one from ACC International is what makes your analysis consistent, objective, and ultimately defensible when people start asking questions. We can actually boil that whole complicated chart down to these 4 essential steps. 1, you pick the right baseline, the accepted schedule right before the delay happened. 2,
You model the delay event itself. We often call this a fragment, which is basically a mini schedule of the delay. 3. You plug that fragment into your schedule and hit recalculate. And 4. You measure the difference. The change in the project completion date is your time impact. Simple as that.
All right, let's bring this all home and make it super practical. How does this theoretical procedure actually look when you're sitting in front of your computer using the industry standard software Primavera P6? Here is exactly how those 4 theoretical steps translate into actual clicks inside P6. First, you copy the baseline so you don't mess up the original. Then, you add your delay fragment and link it into the schedule's logic. If you need to, you can apply a constraint. Next, you run the scheduler. That's our recalculate step. And finally, you compare the new finish date to the original one. That difference, that is the quantifiable result of your analysis, your extension of time. And that really brings us back to the most important principle of the TIA, highlighted right here by AC International. It is a prospective or forward-looking technique. This isn't about looking back months later. It's about showing the likely impact of an event based on the plan you had at that very moment. And that is what gives you a clear and timely basis for your claim. And that leads us to the final and maybe most critical thought. Knowing this method is absolutely half the battle. But an analysis is only as good as the data you feed it. So the real question you have to ask yourself is this. Is my project documentation, my schedule updates, my daily reports, my records of what actually happened, is it all robust and timely enough to support a claim that's truly accurate and defensible? That's the question every project team needs to answer.